About 70 American hijackers still live in Cuba, but only a few move freely and have adjusted to this society. The rest are in jail or mental hospitals, and about 15 live in an old Havana hotel at government expense. They cannot leave and they cannot work. They exist in fear. For this reason, we agreed not to film those who didn't want to be or film their building. But 40-year-old Keith Rowe, formerly of Fort Myers, agreed to be seen with us, a move considered very dangerous by the other hijackers. He took a Texas shrimp boat in 1970 and planned to eventually get to North Korea to check on the crew of the Pueblo, the American spy ship. He spent 2 years in jail instead. Rowe admits to a history of mental problems, and he's now a man without a country. Has it been tough?
Tough? Hell yes, it's been tough. It's been insane. Why? Completely different social status of existence. A complete lack of comprehension on anyone else's part as to what an American citizen would be going through trying to live in this environment under the extreme pressure and conditions that I was forced to live under. I mean, they can't comprehend this. If they do, they obviously enjoy some sadistic pleasure of taking advantage of an American or to see if he's going to go insane or not. Some have.
Why?
Why? If you live this for any length of time...
What's this?
The way I've lived in this country, the way we've lived in this place since we've been here. Numerous hijackers have been killed, either committing suicide, hanging themselves. One jumped off a building, other climbed a fence, let the people shoot him down with a machine gun, trying to escape from Con. He couldn't take it anymore. He knew he'd be killed. Others hung themselves in G2.
That's a prison.
No, that's the military security lockup when you arrive in this country. They never got out of there. Of course, it's a crude bunch of people that came down here. And why I can't get out of here, I don't know. Maybe because they're waiting for me to go insane or something, or I don't know. But they've refused to issue a permit for my release in the past. I'm supposed to have permission to leave now.
Are you sorry you ever took the boat down here?
No, but I guarantee you I'll never do it again.
I talked to 2 other Americans here in Havana who hijacked airplanes to this country, and they spent a lot of time in jail as punishment. They were afraid to be interviewed on camera, but they say they feel they're not wanted by either Cuba or the United States. Right now, they are living in an old Havana hotel in mental misery with no work and little to do. And all the 20 men there say they are willing to pay any price if only they would be allowed to come home. Ike Seamans, Channel 4 News, Havana. The outpouring of goodwill started when the South Dakota basketball team marched into the Havana Coliseum. The players had been told they might be booed. If that happened, they planned to go into the stands to give away souvenirs and to shake hands. That was not necessary, as they were cheered loudly. And the 2 games were a TV spectacular, too. Other events lost attendance as thousands of Cubans nationwide stayed home to watch the games covered with new color television cameras. The feeling spread to the streets of old Havana, where the visitors were regarded curiously in this city, which has not seen U.S. citizens in large numbers in 17 years. A teacher obliged by posing her students for the camera-toting tourists. The kids were late for lunch, but no one seemed to mind.
No.
22-year-old Olita Proctor from San Francisco is the only United States citizen known to be in college in Cuba. A communist, she came here 4 years ago to cut sugarcane, and today seems to be as much Cuban as American. How do the Cuban people feel about Americans in general and improved relations with the United States?
Well, most Cubans are very optimistic and very happy about it. Some who have been affected personally by attacks by the CIA are bitter, but at the same time they're hopeful about these new relations.
In other words, whereas the governments may have had hostilities for all these years, the people are not quite so harsh in their judgments.
Well, the people have never had hard feelings about the United States people, just the government.
That's a distinction the Castro government has made for years, And now it's actively courting American tourists, since visits here will mean hard currency for a depleted national treasury. Besides the South Dakotans, we met other Americans in the streets who came in through Mexico. It took them just 3 days to get their visas. Americans who are intent upon coming to Cuba may have to find their own way here through countries like Mexico, Jamaica, or Canada. That's because tour operators in the United States who thought they could begin tours this month have been delayed by the Cuban government. The earliest American tour will probably not begin until sometime in May. Ike Seamans, Channel 4 News, Havana. American tourism in Havana is something that has not been seen in a very long time, but it appears that that is about to change.
This building was converted into the museum.
One thing Americans will find are expert tour guides who speak excellent English. Others have been specially trained in Russian, French, and other languages. Tourists will find that there are virtually no restrictions on where they can go and what they'll see, but most choose to travel by bus. The government here spent $5 million to acquire 80 luxury tour buses from Spain, complete with bars, bathroom, and air conditioning. More purchases are planned. They take visitors to Revolutionary Plaza, which is the focal point for national rallies and speeches by Fidel. The statue of Jose Marti is there too, as are giant murals of communist heroes, both Russian and Cuban. Another new attraction in Havana features the yacht Castro and his men sailed in from Mexico to Cuba to start their revolution. A United States tank given to the Cubans by the North Vietnamese for use at the Bay of Pigs is there, and so are other memorabilia of the revolution. Old Havana is another attraction with its colonial architecture, but its appearance is drab. Most buildings look as if they could use some paint or sandblasting. This, more than anything else in Cuba, is symbolic of the hard economic times this nation faces because of a low world price for sugar and massive welfare programs that cost more than the government can afford. Havana has more than 20 nightclubs, but the premier is the old Tropicana. Opened in 1947, the Tropicana still puts on a dazzling show, but without the gambling and naughty but nice atmosphere. 3 nights a week are reserved for workers judged outstanding by their union. And perhaps as an appeasement to the Russians who provide up to $4 million a day in aid for Cuba, a couple of dances are distinctly Soviet in nature. The Cubans are currently building 59 hotels all over the island in hopes of handling up to 300,000 tourists by 1980. And the existing hotels are 90% full most of the time. Boyer Palmer and his wife Fern from Minneapolis were 2 of the first Americans to get into Cuba after the travel ban was lifted, and they want to organize group tours from the United States. Do you think Americans are going to like this type of a vacation when it's available to them?
I think you will find 2 types of Americans. The one type will be satisfied with the sun and the sea, where the other type will make the one trip and probably say there's not enough other activities to keep them interested, and they will get probably enough of going on the tours.
There's no question the Cubans want Americans to visit because they need the hard currency, but they also are wondering how their presence and demands will affect this rigidly controlled communist society. Ike Seamans, Channel 4 News, Havana. Agriculture is still Cuba's #1 industry. Today, 70% of the land is owned by the government. The rest is held by small farmers, but the agricultural agency sells them all supplies and buys all the output. Cuban tobacco is still a thriving business and apparently has not been hurt by the trade embargo imposed by the United States. Production has doubled since 1959. Canada, Cuba's 3rd largest trading partner, buys $1.5 million worth of tobacco each year. Canada has also sold Cuba herds of dairy cattle in recent years. Always a big industry on this island, today's production techniques are similar to those of the Eastern Bloc nations. At this 122,000-acre farm, about 40 miles east of Havana, there are 54,000 head of cattle. The farm's director says milk production is up 41 times over the 1970 levels. American farmers who were observing on this day were impressed with what they saw. Yet in 1976, Cuba had to import more than $7.5 million worth of dairy products from other countries. But sugar remains the #1 money crop here, and Soviet-made harvesting equipment is eliminating the need for cutting cane by hand. But the low world price for the product means that Cuba cannot pay its international debts, and it can't import all the products it needs. Plus, cutbacks have been made in the 5-year economic development plan because of the sugar price crisis. The Soviet Union buys Cuban sugar at 3 times the current price to help, and Canada spent $68 million to buy sugar here last year. That's a substantial portion of the $300 million trade pipeline that's open between the two countries. But Canadian businessmen are worried that they'll lose some of this to Americans who see a potential $750 million a year in trade with Cuba. If the United States could buy Cuban sugar, it is unclear whether it would do so because the current low world price is hurting American sugar producers. But the Cuban trade minister has said that if the United States and Cuba were trading, he would be happy to sell sugar to the United States. Ike Seamans, Channel 4 News, near San Jose, Cuba. The United States and Cuba may not yet have diplomatic relations again, but there's one thing the two countries have in common: baseball. But the similarity ends there. The rules are the same, but in this communist country, there are no professional teams, and there's no charge for any sporting event. The top league here is thought to be on a par with the high minors in the United States, and American scouts say there are 10 Cubans who could play Major League Baseball right now. One is slugging first baseman Antonio Munos. The 28-year-old physical education teacher said, through an interpreter, he'd like to play in the big leagues, a surprising comment, since the Cuban government opposes professionalism. He quickly changed his statement.
He said that he don't think that he will have any benefit playing in the major league, that the revolutionary government of Cuba give him all what he wants in this level, and that he will just like to see that baseball, but he's not interested in playing at that level.
Third baseman Pedro Rodriguez showed why he's a favorite as he hit a 390-foot home run out of Havana's Latin American Stadium. These men are not pros in the American sense, but they are given 3 months off with pay during the regular season, and the best of them compete internationally on the prestigious national team. Cuba's sports industry makes all the equipment, including bats made of Russian ash. But the best teams seem to prefer the ones made in the United States, which are bought in Mexico. And all foul balls are returned, a custom that started when the trade embargo was initiated in 1962. Baseball is a passion here, and there was great disappointment when the Yankees didn't come to play. By next fall, however, some big league team is expected to visit Havana again. But another old tradition will not be renewed. No longer will Cuban baseball players like Minnie Minoso, Tony Perez, or Louis Tiant be exported to the majors. As a government spokesman says, under the current Cuban system, an athlete is not merchandise. Ike Seamans, Channel 4 News, Havana. This is a bat lathe in a sports industry complex in Havana. Prior to the revolution, this type of job didn't exist. And as in all aspects of Cuban life, the sports industry complex is state-owned and controlled. It was created after the United States trade embargo was initiated in 1962. The state agency that controls the manufacturing also runs the nation's athletic team. It spends about $48 million a year, or 2% of the national budget, to develop the physical side of what the government here calls the new man. About 1,100 workers make Cuba's sports equipment, everything from horse show prize ribbons to kayaks. 50,000 uniforms a year are produced. 500 pair of baseball and soccer shoes are turned out each day, and some 5,000 baseballs are manufactured each week. The balls are also exported to other Latin American countries. For a 5.5-day week, the workers are paid about $156 a month. And instead of the old patriotic appeals for volunteer labor, the government now offers material incentives for good work.
We give the worker perhaps the opportunity for 1 week at the beach free for his outstanding work during the year. We also give some workers that are considered national heroes of work the opportunity to go travel around the socialist countries, absolutely free.
Do you find that improves production?
That does improve production.
And even in sports equipment manufacturing, the ideological and political value of athletics in a communist state is always in clear view, as is that well-known Cuban athlete who has declared that sports is a right of the people. Ike Seamans, Channel 4 News, Havana.